He pointed a loaded gun at my son on our front lawn in broad daylight over a bird feeder. And Karen, she stood behind him with her HOA clipboard and that smug lemon-sucking grin she wears like perfume. You see, in our charming little subdivision of Red Oak Estates, where the grass is regulated and your mailbox color must be approved, we somehow ended up with a self-appointed HOA president who acts more like a dictator with a yardstick than a neighbor with a clipboard. And the man with the gun. Oh, that was her boyfriend. A part-time sheriff's deputy with a full-time ego and zero sense of boundaries. They thought they were in charge of this place until they picked a fight with the wrong veteran. Because what Karen didn't know was my son isn't just some quiet guy back from overseas. He's special forces trained, calm under pressure, and yes, legally armed. And what came next? Well, let's just say Red Oak Estates would never be the same. I moved into Red Oak Estates for the peace, the quiet, the cul-de-sacs, and trimmed hedges and monthly potlucks with overcooked casseroles and suspiciously identical pies. My husband and I had just retired, and this neighborhood promised a calm place to sip coffee, feed the birds, and maybe die in peace. But no one warned us about Karen. She started small, passive-aggressive notes about our flagpole being too tall per HOA Code 4.3, and complaints that our garden gnome was non-compliant ornamentation. We laughed it off, thought maybe she was just bored or lonely, but boredom doesn't explain the fines we started getting. $75 for a non-regulation mailbox handle, $200 for unauthorized paint tone variation on garage trim. She had power. She knew it, and she used it like a blunt object. Karen was the kind of woman who ran for HOA president unopposed, then rewrote the rules so no one else could run. She chaired every meeting, rewrote voting procedures, and shut down any neighbor who dared question her vision. She wasn't a neighbor. She was a regime. And then she met Derek, her cop boyfriend. He wasn't officially part of HOA, of course, but suddenly he was everywhere, patrolling the block in his cruiser, checking on things, knocking on doors under the guise of code enforcement. Some neighbors liked the attention. Others started locking their gates. Then my son came home. Michael, quiet, keeps to himself, mows my lawn every Sunday, and says ma'am to everyone, even the cat. Karen didn't like him, said he looked intimidating. Said his truck was oversized for community specs. Said our American flag was hostile imagery. We ignored her until the fines started stacking. Until Derek showed up on our lawn. That day, Michael was hanging a bird feeder from the old oak. I was on the porch. Karen came striding up the sidewalk like she owned the pavement, Derek 2 steps behind her with his mirrored sunglasses and his badge on display. She said we were in violation of Code 6.8b, unauthorized wildlife attraction devices. Michael turned, bird seed still in hand, and asked, "You serious?" That's when Derek reached for his holster, pulled the damn thing, pointed it at my son. And Michael? He didn't flinch. He didn't move. He just looked at the man with a calm so terrifying it made my skin crawl. Then he smiled, not a friendly smile, the kind of smile that says, "You just made the biggest mistake of your HOA career." If pointing a gun at my son was the crescendo, let's rewind to the overture, because like all great tragedies, this one started with petty complaints, a garden hose, and one very territorial hummingbird. Let me explain. Back before Derek showed up with his weaponized ego and mirrored shades, Karen had already begun what I call her reign of mild tyranny. She took over the HOA board 2 years ago, unopposed, naturally, because no one else wanted the job. That was our first mistake. At first, she did the usual HOA dance, newsletters, holiday banners, passive-aggressive reminders about garbage bins. But once she tasted power, it was like watching a suburban Napoleon rise to the throne. She rewrote bylaws like she was carving commandments into stone tablets. The neighborhood, Red Oak Estates, was your standard retirement cul-de-sac. Quiet, predictable, full of people who put up Christmas decorations on November 1st and wave politely while judging your lawn height from behind their blinds. Karen was perfect for it. She was also the kind of woman who wore a visor unironically, walked a schnauzer named Muffin, and printed out citations for ornamental disobedience. And yes, that was her actual phrasing when she fined the Thompsons for having a lawn gnome dressed like Elvis. Karen's compliance crusade. The first time I knew we were in trouble was when she showed up at my door with a tape measure. "I'm just checking your mailbox," she said cheerily. "It looks like it's half an inch too high." And unfortunately, Code 3.4 says. I stopped listening. She fined us $50. A week later, she fined us again, this time for unauthorized hose visibility. And apparently, my green garden hose disrupted the visual harmony of the neighborhood. Never mind that I was watering roses in 90 degrees heat. Karen had decided that hoses should be neutral tones only. That was strike 2. Strike 3 came when Michael came home from deployment. He'd served 4 tours, special forces, saw things no human should, and yet the only thing that rattled him, HOA drama. When he parked his F-250 in our driveway, Karen pounced like a hawk spotting a mouse in an unapproved flower bed. "It's too wide," she said. "The tires exceed the parking boundary lines by 2 inches, and we do not allow vehicles that size overnight." Michael raised an eyebrow. "You mean the truck that's legally parked on my family's private property?" Karen smiled like someone who just discovered a loophole. "It's technically common property if the front tires cross the curb. We'll be issuing a $170 fine." Michael didn't say a word, just nodded. Calm. Too calm. And that's when I started getting nervous. The cop, the clipboard, and the creepy random inspections. Then came Derek, part-time deputy, full-time walking lawsuit. Suddenly, random inspections became a thing. Derek and Karen walked the neighborhood together, armed with clipboards, cameras, and what I swear was a laminated HOA Bible. They knocked on doors, snapped photos, and cited people for everything from faded shutters to non-compliant porch cushions. Karen claimed it was beautification enforcement. We called it what it was, suburban surveillance. Michael, he kept quiet, but every night I saw him on his laptop, typing, watching, researching. Turns out HOA bylaws are public record, and Michael had a long memory and a longer folder full of screenshots, dates, and Karen's very questionable decisions. The turning point. Bird feeder insurrection. Things escalated when Michael hung a bird feeder on our oak tree. It was his way of coping. Quiet mornings, coffee in hand, just watching cardinals and blue jays flap around in peace. Karen hated it. "It's not HOA approved," she said. "Code 6.8b, no wildlife attracting devices." Michael pointed at 3 other houses with feeders. "You find them?" She grinned. "They're on the list." 3 days later, a fine arrived in the mail. $300. But Michael didn't flinch. He just said, "Okay," which in Michael speak means something is coming. And something did. Operation Pine Straw. Karen installed surveillance cameras on HOA property aimed directly at our house. She claimed it was for community security, but they only pointed one way, at us. We responded by planting pine straw all over the front yard. HOA legal, of course. Michael triple-checked. Karen accused us of landscape aggression. Then she held an emergency board meeting, which she chaired with no one else present, and proposed a rule: no natural mulch without prior approval. It passed. Unanimously. Michael appealed. She denied it. He appealed again. She fined us $500. That's when I found him in the garage polishing a folder of documents thicker than a phone book. I asked what he was doing. "Just preparing," he said. "Sometimes the quiet guy in the room is just the one who hasn't spoken yet." The neighborhood that begins to crack, we weren't the only ones. The Thompsons were fined for using unapproved window tinting. The Blacks got a violation for flag placement proximity. Even poor Mrs. Wilson, who's 84 and blind in one eye, got written up for excessive bird bath algae. But people were afraid to speak out. Karen had manipulated proxy votes, rewritten meeting rules, and made herself president for life. She had Derek. She had the bylaws. She had a clipboard with more power than sense. But what she didn't have was Michael. And Michael? He had something better than a clipboard. He had training. He had patience. And he had evidence. Because while Karen was measuring grass blades with a ruler, Michael had been quietly gathering video documentation and witnesses. All by the book, all admissible, and all ready for something she never saw coming, a formal federal complaint. But that's for next time. By the time summer rolled around, Red Oak Estates didn't feel like a neighborhood anymore. It felt like a Cold War. Neighbors spoke in whispers. Lawns were trimmed with military precision, not out of pride, but fear. You could practically feel Karen's clipboard breathing down your neck. And just when we thought she'd finally run out of rules to invent, she found a new target. Our dog. Now listen, Max is a 12-year-old golden retriever with arthritis and a fear of squirrels. He wouldn't bite a biscuit without permission. But that didn't stop Karen from filing an animal aggression complaint, because he barked once at a squirrel, not at a child, not at a neighbor, at a squirrel. She claimed it was a noise disruption in violation of Code 7.12. She issued us a $200 fine and said, "One more incident and animal control will be notified." That was the moment I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Michael clenched his jaw. Let me be clear. My son has been through things he doesn't talk about. He's been in villages where no one comes back whole. He's led missions that don't get written down. And yet, the only time I've seen his hands shake was when Karen threatened his dog. That night, he printed out every HOA code ever written. He highlighted every violation Karen had ever overlooked on her own property: illegal pavers, 2 trash bins instead of 1, a backyard shed with no permit. And then he did something I'll never forget. He knocked on the neighbors' doors. The quiet ones start speaking. Turns out Michael wasn't the only one keeping records. The blacks had audio of Derek making inappropriate comments during a compliance walk. The Thompsons had footage of Karen digging up their decorative plants, which she'd later fine them for being dead. Even sweet Mrs. Wilson had saved every citation she'd gotten -27 in total, and all suspiciously vague. Michael took it all, compiled it into a 48-page dossier, labeled and time-stamped. Then he drove it to the county HOA regulatory office. Turns out, when an HOA starts abusing its authority and multiple households come forward with documented proof, people start listening, especially when one of those people is a decorated veteran with connections in federal oversight. Michael filed an official complaint citing abuse of power, conflict of interest, and possible civil rights violations. And he wasn't done. The emergency meeting that wasn't so private a week later, Karen called an emergency HOA meeting at the clubhouse. She didn't invite us. Of course not. But Michael showed up anyway. He brought his uniform. Not to intimidate, not to threaten, just to remind them who he was. Someone who fought for the very freedoms Karen was trying to choke with her laminated bylaw binder. He sat in the back row, silent, while Karen stood at the podium ranting about non-compliant residents, subversive attitudes, and the need for tighter control. Then he raised his hand and asked one simple question. "Madame President, can you explain how HOA funds were used to pay for the surveillance cameras pointed exclusively at my family's home without community vote, without notice, and without legal permit?" Karen blinked. Someone in the room gasped. Michael pulled out a printed bank record. Page 6. HOA check number 4889. Security equipment purchased using community funds. Installed without authorization. Karen stammered something about emergency powers, but the room had already shifted. The muttering started. Heads turned. Someone whispered, "She used our money for that." Michael leaned back. Didn't say another word. He didn't have to. The final straw. The front lawn incident. Karen didn't take it well. The very next morning, Derek showed up again, this time with 2 other officers. They claimed they were responding to a community safety report. They marched onto our property, demanded Michael remove the flagpole we'd had up for 8 years, suddenly now considered a hazard. Michael refused. Derek stepped forward, and that's when it happened. Derek unholstered his weapon, pointed it straight at Michael. No warning, no cause, just rage and embarrassment wrapped in a badge. Karen stood on the sidewalk, arms folded, smiling like she just won a game she didn't understand. And Michael? He didn't move, didn't flinch. He calmly said, "This is all being recorded," which it was, 3 different angles. Our doorbell cam, Michael's own chest cam, and a neighbor across the street with her phone aimed right at Derek. What Karen and Derek didn't know. Michael had filed a restraining order request 2 days prior and was granted a temporary protective order just that morning, which meant Derek, he was in violation of a court order the moment he stepped onto our property, and he just committed assault with a deadly weapon, caught on video. Within the hour, county deputies, real ones, were at our door. They didn't come for Michael. They came for Derek. He was cuffed right there on our lawn. Karen screamed, tried to block the view, claimed Michael had set them up, but nobody believed her anymore. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Some came outside and clapped. And Karen, her clipboard slipped from her hand, hit the pavement, and stayed there. Michael picked it up, read the top page, then smiled, because guess what? Karen had illegally signed off on her own monthly HOA paycheck, 3 times the amount legally allowed. We didn't even have to report it. The investigators would handle that part. The thing about Karen, she never thought she'd lose, because people like her, clipboard tyrants in yoga pants and power tripping through bylaws, don't plan for defeat. They plan for domination, for unchecked control, for ruling over plastic flamingos and patio furniture like suburban royalty. But as it turns out, even self-proclaimed HOA queens have to answer to the law. And Michael? Well, Michael was done playing nice. The calm before the storm after Derek was arrested. You'd think Karen might lay low, apologize, hide her surveillance signs, and maybe, I don't know, do some soul searching. Nope. She doubled down, sent out a massed HOA newsletter titled Maintaining Order in Times of Disruption. She accused us of aggressive behavior, Michael of staging a false flag incident, and implied our unpatriotic actions were threatening community safety. Unpatriotic. She was accusing a Special Forces veteran who served 4 combat tours of unpatriotism. The woman had gall, I'll give her that. But that email, that glorious email, was her biggest mistake yet, because she didn't just send it to the neighborhood. She CC'd the entire county board. And Michael's lawyer. Yes, he has a lawyer now. That's right. Michael hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, either. A bulldog civil rights attorney who specializes in HOA overreach and unlawful surveillance. Turns out what Karen and her clipboard had been doing wasn't just annoying. It was illegal. Using community funds for unauthorized purchases, illegal. Installing surveillance equipment aimed at private property without consent, illegal. Falsifying board votes by manipulating proxies, deeply illegal. Michael and the attorney compiled everything. The fake citations, the doctored budgets, the footage of Karen trespassing on other people's yards, the HOA rule book that Karen rewrote herself, complete with conflicting dates and forged digital timestamps. They even subpoenaed HOA financial records and discovered something truly golden. Karen had been paying herself a management stipend every month for 3 years, total, over $18,000. Unapproved, unauthorized, undeclared. Boom. The HOA hearing that became a public spectacle. When the county finally called a hearing, it was supposed to be closed door, but word got out. So many residents from Red Oak Estates showed up that they had to move it to the town library's auditorium. Folding chairs everywhere, people holding printouts of fines. One guy brought his dead gnome as evidence. Michael sat front row. Karen walked in wearing pearls like she was on trial for tax evasion in a Netflix miniseries. She brought 2 manila folders and 0 remorse. But what she didn't bring? A lawyer. Because Karen still thought she could talk her way out of it. Big mistake. Michael speaks, and the room turns. The room was silent when Michael stood. He didn't yell, didn't get emotional, just calmly laid out every violation with documentation, timestamps, and visual evidence. He played a short video montage from neighbor submissions. Derek shouting at residents, Karen ripping up someone's Halloween decorations at 2 a.m., an HOA board meeting where Karen voted 3 times for herself using forged proxies. People gasped. One lady clutched her pearls. Karen started sweating. Then Michael handed the panel a folder titled Chronology of HOA Abuse, Red Oak Estates 2020 to 2024. Inside, screenshots of threatening emails, audio recordings, the financial trail of the misappropriated funds, even a whistleblower letter from a former HOA treasurer Karen had bullied out 2 years earlier. That was the final nail. The verdict, the panel recessed for 40 minutes. When they returned, the lead investigator didn't sugarcoat it. Karen Mitchell, you are hereby removed from your position on the Red Oak Estates HOA board, effective immediately. Further investigation will be handled by the district attorney's office. Karen stood up. You can't do this to me. I built this community. The room erupted with applause. Someone yelled, you built it on lies. Someone else held up a sign that read, Free the bird feeders. Even Muffin, her schnauzer, barked. Okay, I made that part up, but I like to think Muffin was on our side. Karen stormed out. Her clipboard fell off her arm on the way. She left it behind. Nobody gave it back. HOA reform and a new beginning in the weeks that followed, things changed fast. A temporary board was appointed. Michael was asked to join, but he declined, said he just wanted peace and bird watching. The neighborhood voted to revise all the bylaws, remove the ornamental restrictions, legalized normal-sized trucks, allowed bird feeders, even reinstated decorative flamingos with no questions asked. A full audit was launched into the HOA finances. Charges were filed against Karen for embezzlement and fraud. Derek lost his badge permanently. And us? We planted a second flagpole, one with the POW/NIA banner right next to the American flag. Karen tried to move to another neighborhood, but apparently the story followed her. She's currently renting a condo in a development with no HOA. Imagine that. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but in Red Oak Estates it came with a gavel, a court transcript, and a community newsletter titled Welcome Back, Sanity. After Karen's dramatic downfall at the HOA hearing, you'd think that would be the end of it. You'd be wrong, because like any true Karen, she wasn't going down without filing something. Yep, you guessed it, Karen's final act, the Great Defamation Lawsuit of 2024. Exactly 2 weeks after being removed from the HOA board, Karen filed a civil lawsuit against the entire neighborhood, claimed defamation of character, emotional distress, and I kid you not, loss of future leadership opportunities. She demanded $250,000 in damages, said her reputation had been unfairly destroyed, that the videos shared online were edited to vilify her, that Michael orchestrated a campaign to ruin her life. The case made it to the county court system, and once again, Michael showed up not as a defendant, but as a witness for the community's legal team. Because this time, Karen wasn't up against one family. She was up against everyone. The trial. Karen versus Common Sense. The trial lasted 4 days. Day 1. Karen's lawyer claimed she was the victim of an internet mob fueled by misinformation. Day 2. The HOA's lawyer, backed by over 30 residents, showed evidence of illegally signed checks, forged proxy ballots, unauthorized surveillance camera placement, misuse of HOA funds, including $600 spent on presidential nameplates, and of course, the infamous bird feeder email, which somehow got leaked online and became a meme. Day 3. Michael testified. Not bitter, not angry, just calm. He explained how he served overseas for freedom, only to come home and watch a power-hungry neighbor chip away at that same freedom with forms, fines, and fake authority. He ended with this: I didn't fight for this country so someone with a clipboard could tell my mother what color garden hose she's allowed to use. The courtroom went silent. Even the judge paused. Day 4. The judge ruled Karen's case dismissed with prejudice, meaning she couldn't refile. But that wasn't all. The court ordered her to pay $18,400 in legal fees to the HOA. Every penny she'd once stolen in stipends, returned with interest. Her bank account was frozen. Her condo lease terminated. Her LinkedIn page mysteriously disappeared. Red Oak Estates had officially Karen-proofed itself. The aftermath. Rebuilding more than yards with Karen gone. The neighborhood didn't just bounce back. It bloomed. The new HOA board, made up of real neighbors, volunteers, people who actually like living there, not ruling it. They threw a block party, the first in years. Kids rode bikes again. Dogs barked freely. Gnomes made a triumphant return, Elvis and all. Michael declined a seat on the board again, said he preferred being in the background. But at the party, Someone handed him a handmade sign that read, HOA Hero of the Area. He laughed, hung it on our front porch next to the flag. Even Max, our ancient golden retriever, seemed lighter on his paws. And as for our bird feeder, still hanging, still attracting blue jays and hummingbirds, still 100% HOA compliant. Not that anyone checks anymore. Karen's legacy, or lack thereof. Rumor has it Karen tried to move to a gated community in Arizona. Didn't make it past the interview. Apparently, someone Googled her name, found the HOA hearing footage, the court ruling, the bird feeder memes. Let's just say she's laying low now, somewhere far away, hopefully clipboard free. One last walk a few weeks later, Michael and I took a walk around the block. No drama, just dusk light, cicadas, and the occasional sprinkler clicking on. We passed by the spot where Derek once pulled a gun. Now it's a community herd garden. We waved at the blacks. They were grilling. Mrs. Wilson was on her porch, rocking gently with her cat. Michael stopped under the old oak, looked up at the bird feeder, then at me. Funny how peace feels louder than chaos, he said. I nodded, especially when you had to fight for it. He smiled. Let's keep it this way. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after a long, ridiculous, clipboard-fueled war. The kind of peace where you finally sit on your porch without wondering if you're in violation of some obscure shade of beige rule. Where bird feeders swing freely, garden gnomes stand tall, and the only thing in your mailbox is junk mail, not fines. But even now, with the sun setting over a quieter, happier red oak estates, I still think about it. I think about how close we came to letting one person, just one, twist the neighborhood into fear. And I think about the lessons we learned, because this wasn't just about Karen. This was about what happens when we stop paying attention, when we assume that someone with a clipboard and a title has our best interest at heart, when we let apathy win. Lesson 1. Power loves a vacuum. Karen didn't take control of the HOA. We gave it to her, by not showing up, by not voting, by rolling our eyes at the rules and thinking, it's just a bird feeder. Who cares? Well, Karen cared. And that's exactly how she turned lawn care into legislation. If your neighborhood has an HOA or is thinking about starting one, be there. Know your bylaws. Read the minutes. Ask who's signing the checks. Because bad rules aren't born overnight. They're slipped into existence when no one's looking. Lesson 2. Karen doesn't win if you document everything. Michael didn't yell. He didn't throw punches. He made a paper trail. Every photo, every email, every shady vote, recorded, printed, time-stamped, and when it mattered, it wasn't his word against hers. It was proof against performance. So if you're dealing with a petty tyrant in caucus, keep records, because the one thing louder than their voice is their own actions on paper. Lesson 3. Community beats control. The reason Karen fell wasn't because of one man. It was because the community woke up. The blacks, the Thompsons, sweet Mrs. Wilson. Folks who've been quiet for too long finally said enough. And once neighbors talk, tyrants fall. So build community before you need it. Host potlucks. Talk to the guy 2 doors down. Share garden tools, stories, coffee, because organized neighbors are Karen's worst nightmare. Lesson 4. Justice moves slow, but it moves. Let's be honest. It felt like Karen was untouchable for a long time. And maybe you're thinking there's a Karen in your neighborhood, and nothing ever happens to her. But trust me, time, evidence, and the law, they catch up. Not always fast, not always loud, but when it hits hard. So go ahead, share your HOA story. Let's build a community of people who know the difference between enforcing rules and enforcing egos. Remember, some wars are fought on battlefields, others on lawns, and sometimes the strongest weapon is a well-placed bird feeder.